the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
Hey, I heard you missed us. We're back. I brought my pencil. That's hot for teacher Van Halen. Anyways, what's poppin', players? Welcome to HBR News 142, where your favorite Badgers ferret out the best feels, funnies, and what the fucks to discuss slam bam Badger style. Buckle your seatbelts, make sure you're strapped in tight, and make sure you give your children all your medication to hold on to for the next hour. That way you're not, tempted. Oh, don't worry about them ingesting your pills. They couldn't possibly open those things anyways. Just tell them tell them that they're rattles. So today's HBR news panel consists of Hannah Wallen, Pussycat Punisher, and Punster, and she wants to inform you that a plateau is a high form of flattery. Dr. Ranamaram, Panda, long-range rhetorician, and the OG international man of mystery. Women want him, and men want to be him. And I am your host for this evening, Max Garrett, Simpsons kin, and definitely not Hunter from Spyro the Dragon. Hey, Sony, you gave us a remaster of the old Crash Bandicoot games. Bravo for that. Why not Spyro as well? Come on, get on it. Anyways, that's besides the point. Today, we will be discussing the following topics. One sec. Excuse me, I am eating a traditionally English dinner, sausage and mash. So if you hear me, expel something unpleasant, that's why. So the topics. First of all, can somebody explain to me what it is with the UK police and not being able to do their fucking job? Yet again, we're talking about a UK man who was accused of being a rapist, but then over a year later, video footage surfaces proving the man's innocence. Didn't we do this story like last week or a couple weeks ago? To quote that dude,
we did.
Yeah, no kidding. To quote that dude from Far Cry 3, have I ever told you the definition of insanity? Last week, we discussed an article from the BBC that pointed out the negative side of the burgeoning #MeToo movement. Apparently, the only people pointing out that negative side are, quote-unquote, individual, well-to-do white women who say they're feminists while also claiming allegiance to old power structures. This is all according to Jezebel writer Stacey Edwards. To Ms. Edwards, I say this. If you had any say in what a power structure should look like, it would crumble faster than one of Pam Anderson's marriages. Famous Canadian author Margaret Atwood, probably most famous for writing The Handmaid's Tale, the TV show, she penned an article for a Canadian publication called The Globe and Mail called Am I a Bad Feminist? She did this because throughout her life, she has been referred to as such by news publications and other ordinary individuals, quote-unquote ordinary. However, she is drawing attention to this more so now because she still thinks that due process is necessary even in cases of sexual misconduct. With the advent of the #MeToo movement, she fears that vigilante justice will replace our current legal system. And finally, we end on something a bit lighter. Everybody knows the TV show Friends, right? The hit 90s sitcom that ran for 10 seasons. Ross, Joey, Phoebe, Monica, Rachel, and Chandler. Guess what? The professionally offended have found reason to call the show racist, sexist, and homophobic. Could I be any more surprised? I have a quick word of advice to people who use critical theory on this beloved show. You stop pushing the Q-tip when there's resistance. By the way, those are quotes from the show in case you didn't know. And finally, our bonus story for the patron-only after show. Shit, what are we doing for the after show? No, we have something for the after show. I just didn't write a summary for it. What the hell are we doing? There's a professor. We're doing a story from Campus Reform, which is a great website in case you guys haven't heard about it. They break a whole bunch of campus lunacy stories. It's campusreform.com. Go check them out. We're just going to be talking about a story where apparently a teacher proclaims that the reason why women aren't getting into STEM is because STEM is toxified, I guess you can say, by masculine ideals. And masculine ideals, the things that they come up with in terms of what those things are going to make you lose your shit, just like every other story that we talk about on here. Anyway, if you would like to participate in our after shows, either as an audience member or a participant, please consider becoming a patron by going to www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. Obviously, that's all one word. And now I'm going to take back to eating my my sausages while Hannah reads you the first story.
Okay, so the first story is another case of UK police withholding exculpatory evidence, and it was written up by Andrew G. Holy shit, did we have to have a name that I can't pronounce to be the first thing? I didn't even notice that. Okay, Mackle Teclalaminot. Awaited trial. I'm not laughing at the name. It's just I should have read this ahead of time.
It is a comically long name. It's
like
it's almost
the name's
Welsh.
got like 15 letters in it or something.
Now you know the real reason why I wanted her to read the story.
Yeah. So yeah, I can't even tell where this is from, but it looks like it's Teclalaminot. It's got 3 vowels in a row, so I'm used to 2 vowels in a row, and I know the meaning there. 2 vowels go walking, the first one does a talking, but what do you do when there's 3? It's like abnormal vowel relationships there. Something's going on there.
Pat, I'd like to buy a consonant.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm laughing at me for not reading this ahead of time and figuring that out. But anyway, this poor guy awaited trial for a year, and then I made fun of his name. And this is in London, for the attempted rape of a woman who said that he attacked her as she was going home. He was accused of taking the woman after she fell asleep on the London Tube and dragging her to a park where he then attempted to rape her against a tree. He admitted to having sex with the woman, but claimed the sex was consensual. However, just before the trial was about to start, defense barristers received CCTV footage showing the pair walking hand in hand in a happy frame of mind, strolling through the park. They were with each other for at least 2 hours prior to the alleged attack. The reason that the evidence wasn't turned over was that the investigating officer determined that there was nothing of relevance in the CCTV footage. After the CCTV footage surfaced, the Crown prosecutor dropped the case because there was no longer a realistic chance or prospect of conviction. Judge Holder, the judge overseeing the case, ordered an inquiry into the Metropolitan Police and the CPS. This case is the latest in a string of cases in the UK where exculpatory evidence has not been provided to a defendant.
Mike, what the fuck's going on? Seriously, what's up with the UK and not being able to, the police and not being able to do their job properly?
I don't know. I think we're trying to keep up with the Canadians while they're trying to keep up with the Swedish. It's a race to the bottom.
And the Americans.
Yeah, okay, you know what? We are all racing to see who can cross this stupid line first.
That's the thing. This isn't just happening in the UK; it's happening all over. And this is something that I've seen, in the vexatious litigant cases that I've been either witness to or distantly a witness to. It's a major problem that's happening in more and more cases where either detectives or other officers involved will shuffle obviously exculpatory evidence off to the side like that. And then their excuse later is, well, I didn't think it was relevant to the case. You don't think something that might prove the defendant's innocence is relevant to the case? Is that because you're more interested in getting a conviction than you are in justice? Because it's not justice if you convict the innocent. It's only justice if you investigate thoroughly and act on the facts of the case. And if you're not acting on the facts of the case, you are committing an injustice. And this is something that it's like the domestic violence and sexual victims laws, the intimate partner and sexual violence laws, like the Violence Against Women Act here in the United States, and the laws that kind of mirror it all over the Western world. And in India, it's even worse. The law seems to be more intent. The spirit of the law seems to be to direct investigating officers, arresting officers, all of the various law enforcement individuals involved towards trying to obtain a conviction, that directs prosecuting attorneys towards trying to obtain a conviction. It directs court personnel towards giving that conviction. Not so much investigation and getting to the bottom of things and dealing with the facts, but getting a conviction. And this is the end result. We are losing our due process rights incrementally over the last 30 years. We've lost several aspects of our due process rights. And it's hitting men first because it was directed at men first. It's easier to use female victims to chip this away and cut this down. It's going to hit everybody in the long run. And then women are going to be like, what happened? I thought we had due process. And nobody is going to be able to explain to them, well, you guys lobbied for this law and this law and this law, and they demonstrated to the powers that be that you don't want due process, so now you don't have it.
Yeah, 2 words, slippery fucking slope.
Yeah,
to
that's
quote,
3 words.
I know. I'm being like, what is Dennis Leary makes that joke?
Oh, God, yeah.
Joe fucking Walsh. Okay, look, if there's any evidence that suggests how much the Western world takes the crime of rape seriously, it's stuff like this. It's when people, the investigating officer, right? He said that there wasn't anything of relevance in the CCTV footage. I'm guessing this is the way that I'm interpreting this information, that he withheld that evidence because he couldn't stand the thought of a potential rapist not being convicted. So he just went with the easier way out when it comes to issues like this, trying to determine the guilt of somebody who could commit such a horrendous crime. And I get it, like I've said many times on the show in the past, I have a bias towards believing women. So I'm not sure I would be much better in a situation. Well, I mean, I wouldn't withhold I wouldn't withhold evidence, but it's still a very difficult position to be in regardless. But this is just absolutely disgusting. I wonder how long stuff like this has been going on, because obviously the big story that I can think of that has been on the tips of the tongues of everybody else who's been advocating for the prevalence of false accusations, or sorry, not false accusations, but the fact that the police aren't doing their job, is Rotherham, back in 2014, I believe, where the police didn't carry out their job, the correct duties in their job, because they were afraid of being called racist. Well, here's an example of somebody not doing their job because, I don't know, maybe they were afraid of not towing the line of, believing women and trying to convict people who have been accused. I don't know. That's just one possible way of viewing this. And I'm not saying that's what's going on here. But nevertheless, like Andrew pointed out, this is another in a long string of similar cases to this. So, and like Hannah said, this is just starting. It's going to get much worse, not just for men, but for women as well.
Yeah, this is a situation that this has been, like I said, it's been going on for 30 years. And the first real clue I had to it was when I was in college, because before that I really wasn't paying so much attention to this particular area of rights and laws and stuff. When I was in high school, it was just whatever my family was involved with. But when I was in college, news stories started being published about Take Back the Night rallies and about Mary Koss's research. And it started with Ms. Magazine publishing her research, and there were criticisms of her research. The Toledo Blade had a great article about it that I tweet out periodically online. And then there was also included in that article, he talked about some of the other things that were going on. Feminists started this big push to treat all men as potential rapists, and on what they were doing on campuses. And it came out on, I believe, at Boston College. I may have the university wrong, but there was a group of feminists on campus that put up a bunch of wanted posters of guys that had done nothing. And the wanted poster said, wanted potential rapist. and there was a lawsuit, and there was a major news story, and everything. That actually got a big conversation started about not just due process, but about in the public sphere, the presumption of innocence and so on, rather than the presumption of guilt. But I've been watching what's been pushed over time, and what's gotten through and everything, and the stuff that we've already lost. Like right now, there are certain types of exculpatory evidence that a man cannot present in court if he is accused of rape unless he gets permission from the individual who is judging his guilt or innocence. And in doing so, he's asking an individual that the Violence Against Women Act funds training to do everything he can to find him guilty. So if there is exculpatory evidence that has to do with the woman's sexual history, even if it's not the argument that, hey, she was a slut, she was asking for it, which is what feminists portray all evidence that comes from a woman's sexual history as. It's difficult for a guy to get that entered into court. So if a woman says, well, I bit him, and that proves that I was fighting back, and that proves that it was rape, and it turns out that no, she just bites when she gets excited, and her sexual history demonstrates that, he's got to fight tooth and nail to even get that considered in court, where he should be able to say, no, this is not necessarily evidence that she was fighting. It could be evidence that she was turned on. And here are 6 guys who can tell you that she did it to them too. And if the prosecuting attorney doesn't think that that's exculpatory evidence, he should be able to articulately argue that's not exculpatory evidence. That's slut shaming, And if the prosecuting attorney is wrong, the defendant has the right, at least in under ethical standards and under our original due process standards, the defendant has the right to have that considered. But because there have been laws passed based on the idea that it's hard for a rape victim to deal with having to present evidence to prove what happened to her, that's gone. You don't have that right. They can take away your right to present that type of exculpatory evidence. And in Canada, they're fighting to take away your right to present communications that happened before, during, and after the incident in order to prove that it was consensual. So I mean, this is nuts. And it's, it's stuff like that has been going on for 30 years in the United States. Investigation into rape cases has been portrayed as an act of shaming. When cops try to get details of the case that help them solve the case, help them get the guy, when there has been a rape, and they ask questions about, what the guy had to do to get to the girl. What was she wearing? Could he have cut himself on her zipper? Could he have anything that might have left blood behind? Did he leave bodily fluids behind? All of that stuff is treated like it's an act of shaming her instead of an act of trying to prove who did it, what they did, and when they did it, so that they can actually go into court and say, this is what we have, this is our evidence. And it's all of this stuff has been going on like this for all this time, and nobody's been bothered by it, paying attention to it, except a very few people that get involved in gender issues, and most of them have been on the feminist side. You've got the men's rights movement. The men's rights movement was very small during all of that time. And while there were people that were writing criticisms of all of these attacks on due process and the attacks on men's right to a speedy trial, the attacks on a man's right to confront his accuser, all of the various things that have gone on, the general public has just been like, well, but rape, so it's okay. Wait,
Yeah.
but rape, so we're going to tolerate this, and it's only happening in this particular area of law, so we're not going to be worried about it. The thing is, once a standard is set like that, even if we weren't worried about the wrong man being prosecuted, or an innocent man being prosecuted when a woman lies, there is the fact that this stuff can be transferred to other areas of law. The next thing you know, the tax man might be embarrassed if you present evidence of the fact that you paid your taxes once already. And so that's not admissible in court. If they want to convict you of failure to pay your taxes, they can. And that's basically what's going to happen with this, is as soon as we get to a point where there's no going back and we've lost these rights, the state will start transferring them to areas where the state wants more power.
Yeah, and that potential reality becomes even greater by the day with the advent of social media and how everything nowadays seems to be a trial by Twitter. And look, one other thing I want to say before we move on to the next subject, excuse me, is that I understand the argument that you don't want to re-victimize rape victims because they've already been something that's pretty much as dramatic as it can get. But I try to, when it comes to people that I know who have been raped, I try to tell them, hey, look, everything will be so much better if we can put a case together that things will be so much better once this asshole is behind bars, right? And look, nobody likes going to court. Court, especially in respect to this crime, is absolutely horrible. But if we can just make it past that, then we can put away this guy for a long time. And then he can see what it's like when he goes to a place where there is an actual rape culture. Hannah, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, the re-victimizing the victim argument is something that feminists came up with in their attacks on due process. This has nothing to do with protecting victims from anything. And I'm saying that from the perspective of someone who has been repeatedly victimized by both sexes. It's not more traumatic to relate what happened to you to someone who is trying to help you and trying to do something about it than it was to go through the experience. I don't care how many times feminists say it. I don't care how many women that they convince to be traumatized. And you can determine your frame of mind the same way that women determine their frame of mind when they're asking, do these pants make my ass look fat? And it's not an attempt at finding out if they should wear those pants. It's an effort to start a fight, or it's an effort to get a compliment, but it's not what it looks like. This is the same kind of thing. If you get your mind set on thinking of every question that anybody asks you about your situation when they're trying to help you, as if, thinking of it as if that's an attack on believing your experiences and your situation and so on. Of course, you're going to be more traumatized than if you go in there with the mindset, I am a layman detective going in to talk to the actual professional police detective, and we are going to get to the bottom of this case. It would be like if you went to the doctor and you decided, I have disease X, and you go to the doctor with disease X, and the doctor starts asking about your symptoms, and you take the doctor asking about your symptoms as the doctor not believing you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the doctor has to find out, because you know a certain amount about medicine, and the doctor knows a lot more about medicine. The doctor has to find out what treatment is best for you. And the same thing is true with the cops. They got to find out what treatment is best for your case. And I'm sorry, but the women who are most likely to be traumatized by having their case investigated are the ones who have something to hide. And that doesn't necessarily mean in every case they're lying, but it does mean that they have something to hide. And if you're gonna go to the cops with a story, get your shit together, get your ducks in a row, and go in and talk to the cops. It's already been basically set up by feminists that if you did something illegal, and because you were doing something illegal, you ended up vulnerable to a rapist, you're not, you're not liable now for the illegal thing that you did. So it's not like when you go in there, you're going to get prosecuted in the United States, at least. It's not like you're going to go in there and get prosecuted for being a drug mule because when you went to deliver, the guy that you were delivering to raped you. And as soon as you admit to being a drug mule, but since you've said you've been raped, now they can't do anything about that. And that's basically the way things are, because they don't want women to have something to hide when they go in to report this crime. And it's like I said, it's because of that situation, because they have fought so hard to prevent women from being questioned at all when they go in. It's just, the more I hear this re-victimizing the victim shit, it's nuts. It's the criminal who's on trial. It's the victim's job to prove their case.
Yeah, that's definitely an important way of looking at it as well. I think the bottom line is something that we can all agree on. What has to happen here, we have to go through with due process, because if you're a rape victim and somebody has taken advantage of you and traumatized you in that way, let's get this asshole where he belongs. There's going to be people that want to support you, that are going to want to help you if you're telling the truth. And as difficult as it may be, you can get through it. And once these guys have justice dealt to them, then things will get a whole lot better. And it'll provide you with some closure. Anyways, that'll do it for that. Let's move on to something else revolving around sexual misconduct, the Me Too stuff. So this is called Jezebel's take on the hashtag Me Too backlash, and this is written by The Stapler. Thank you very much. Last week, we covered a BBC story about why women fear a Me Too movement backlash with the author, Kay, covering how both false accusations and conflation of all cases of bad behavior will turn into a witch hunt in which many innocent men may be punished. Good example of that is the story we just talked about. This week, we take a look at an article from Jezebel, Spit on the Fake Queen, my brothers. That's in parentheses in the write-up. I didn't put that in there. This week, we take a look at an article from Jezebel confirming there is, in fact, a backlash against the Me Too movement, and it was hiding in plain sight this whole time. As in the title, the backlash to Me Too is second-wave feminism. Author Stacey Edwards implicates liberal second-wave feminists and exposes their quote-unquote shortcomings on the reckoning. Wow. Second wave, as an ideology, she says, offers comfort to only quote-unquote individual, well-to-do white women who were born with the ability to navigate power structures they inhabit while leaving those very structures perfectly in place. The evidence Edwards uses to back up her criticism of second wavers is that nuanced discussions of Me Too movement do not include accusations of witch hunts and feminist hysteria, which are often used even in mainstream media. Sentiments such as those expressed by 100 French women in an open letter saying, "We do not recognize ourselves in this feminism," that holds male predators accountable for a spectrum of abuse. Make physical attacks a barometer for abuse. Edwards argues that this misses the precariousness of women rendered by institutional discrimination, and holds only the individual woman culpable in quote-unquote self-imposed victimhood. Me Too appears, according to Jezebel, to measure a feminist purity like a vagina cult. Edwards rejects those who criticize the Me Too movement through using words like hysteria, sex panic, victimhood, and witch hunts, or disapprove of the conflation of harassment claims. And for good measure, she calls out those who say, "I'm a feminist, but," which she calls, quote-unquote, an empty gesture at best, but just a need to... Oh, sorry. Let me start again. And for good measure, she calls out those who say, "I'm a feminist, but," which she calls an empty gesture at best, but just a need to claim allegiance to old power structures while also asserting feminist credentials. Edwards ends the article by making it clear that those who don't support Me Too are not recognized in Jezebel's feminism. So take that, liberal second wavers. Oh, Jezebel. Jezzy. The only time that the name Jezebel has ever been attributed to something good was that one chick from the movie Jacob's Ladder. She was hot. Except when she didn't have the demon eyes. But anyways, Hannah, I know you want to say something.
Yeah. Well, I think what we're seeing here basically is more Marxist feminism, the class structure oriented feminism that's basically taken everything from collectivist economic ideals and applied it to gender issues, and particularly in terms of sexual relations and everything. We're seeing those they're trying to apply the smackdown to feminists who during the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even part of the 90s, they were the ones that were the movers and shakers of the feminist movement. Not all of them. In fact, quite a few of them were not necessarily entrenched in Marxist beliefs. Not necessarily, I wouldn't say necessarily liberal feminists, but feminists that were focused specifically on gender itself. And so we're going to see not necessarily a war between these two groups, but definitely a conflict and definitely a push and shove for control of the direction that the movement's lobbying takes. And if that happens, and if the communist end of it wins, then feminism just might eat itself. You might see and get people talking in the chat about the feminist cult eating itself. It will if the progressive stack takes over, because that's shifting right now. The progressive stack is in the process of shifting, and it's alienating more and more parts of the movement. And now, if the gender feminists win that battle, you're still going to see a conflict between gender feminists and equity feminists, and there are more and more second wavers abandoning gender feminism for equity feminism. So there's still that conflict to look at. Like, those are your three really solid segments of feminism, and all three of them are still based on the idea that throughout history, men dominated women, yet somehow women are equal to men. And these women who were not strong enough, not clever enough for centuries to obtain an equal position in society, according to these feminists, that and only the same position is an equal position, a position with equal power and equal rewards that's not the same is not an equal position to them, right? Even if it's a position that women chose. But somehow, all of this time, these equally clever and equally strong women just happen to be dominated by the sex to which they were equally strong and equally clever. And that's the whole basis on which feminism is built. So I think the movement is going to eventually die just because it's built on such an irrational basis.
Well, this is what. Sorry,
but yeah, this conflict notwithstanding, the other end of this is basically they're going to reduce their victim pool, but in the process they're also going to strengthen it. If our society continues to head down the road that we're on right now, where the progressive stack can be exploited politically in order to use thought-terminating cliches to prevent debate on legal matters and legislative matters and push things through. So it's definitely something that this is a sign that we're going to have to be vigilant, even though it's in Jezebel, which is like, even by feminist writing standards, it's a tabloid rag. The tabloid rag of the internet. But And Jezebel is the publication that, in response to learning a moderator of a subreddit they didn't like had been added to prevent the subreddit from illegally hosting sexualized pictures of minors, they attacked him and they outed him. They doxed him. They helped him, I should say, get doxed. That was part of the Gawker attack on Violent Acres, if anybody remembers Violent Acres. And while the guy might have been a dick, he didn't deserve that. And what he was doing was should have actually been right up their alley. He was keeping teenagers out of the subreddit they didn't like, which was the subreddit for posting pictures of people in public places to look at them as attractive people. And then they were closed. That's the stupidest part. But yeah, so that's Jezebel. But even though, like I said, Jezebel is this ridiculous clown of internet publications, this is kind of like our canary in the coal mine here for what's going on with feminism, like this kind of protest.
Why the hell, when Gawker went down, Jezebel just couldn't have gone with it? Why? Okay, well, you know what? Gawker was pretty bad. I'm just trying to decide between the two. Which one would I have preferred? Probably Gawker. But look, just to add on to what Hannah was saying, obviously they're inevitably going to eat themselves. That's just what identity politics is. It's because when you're putting such an emphasis on the issue of power and making that the only thing that's important when it comes to achieving quote-unquote equality for women, then what's going to happen is you're going to give prime importance to a whole bunch of different identities, and all those different identities are going to fracture into an infinite number of groups. And then ultimately what's going to happen at the end is whoever is able to display the greatest level of dominance or actually act on that dominance, they're going to eradicate all the other groups or demean their importance until somebody comes out on top. And all that's going to breed in the other groups that are, well, quote unquote, demeaned, is it's going to breed resentment. So what happens when resentment grows to an unsustainable point? It's going to end in an all-out bloodbath. Well, I don't know if it's going to be actually violent, but whether it's a verbal bloodbath or an actual bloodbath, it's not going to be pretty. So while this internet rag just continues to spew their nonsense, I hope Hannah's right in that sometime soon their demise will be met.
I could actually sum up the feminist conflict, and sort of did in a. I took a video of Anita Sarkeesian talking about collective feminism, and a video of what's her name, Hermione, the actress,
Emma Watson.
Yeah, Emma Watson, talking about the incident where she had posed. She had her tits out, basically, and she was all shocked at the response because she had just gotten done making some feminist statement that posing nude kind of contradicted, and she didn't see the contradiction. And I did a dueling feminists with it. It's on my pitch shoot. I'll have to tweet that out again. But essentially, it's Emma Watson talking about how feminism is about choice, and feminism is about freedom and about equality and all this stuff, and going back and forth with Sarkeesian talking about how feminism is about the collective, and how choice feminism is bad for women, and what it's really all about. And when she gets to the point where she's about to state what it's really all about, that's when I threw in the line, "My tits" by Emma Watson. And it's just that's how I see this conflict. That's really how I see this conflict, is these women like Anita Sarkeesian who think they are the more adult end of feminism, and women like Emma Watson who think they are the conscience of feminism. And you see them dueling with each other all the time. You see them arguing with each other on Twitter. You see them these narratives and these news stories and everything. And it really is each side trying to tell the other this is where feminism is going to go, and you have to do this. So for all of the feminism is not a monolith arguments that you get on social media from feminists, it's bullshit. Women that are feminists are fighting tooth and nail with each other to make feminism a monolith. They just can't decide which monolith to hop onto.
I don't know if they'll ever be able to manufacture an intersectional, the ultimate form, because, like I said, there's just an infinite. Couple things I just wanted to say quickly. One, how the hell do you make Emma Watson seem a lot less stupid than Anita Sarkeesian? And two, to all the people that are listening right now and they heard that nude pictures of Emma Watson exist, relax. It's just her under tit. You're not going to find anything out there but fakes. So come on back, listen to us now. And yeah,
she did something for Vanity Fair, and it showed boob. But yeah, no, everybody is smarter than Anita Sarkeesian. I hate to say it, but she's just a shill. She's just basically a spokesperson. I don't think she thinks up anything she writes.
No, like Jonathan McIntosh just taught her what to say for the last 2 years, and then she just went on walking forward like an automaton. You know, you just pull the string on their back, or that, what is it? You wind them up the thing on their back, and they just walk forward.
It's Femitron.
Femitron, white supremacist capitalist. Yeah, okay. That sounds kind of dumb on my part, but hey, it's not that in terms of my impersonation. Mike, before we do the third topic, do we have any super chats at the moment?
We do. Hang on. In fact, we just got a couple in. We got one ages ago from Joey Jojo, $2.
You're the man.
And it says, "This is why robots are needed. This has to change." That was with regard to the first story. Joey says that every episode.
Is there something you want to tell us, Joey? Do you have a? Yeah, I'm guessing his favorite anime is probably Ghost in the Shell. Well, yeah.
He just gave us another $2 and said Emma Watson is extremely overrated and not pretty. So you don't want an Emma Watson doll then? That's understandable.
Well, she might be overrated. I think she's still very talented, but she is dumb as a brick. Did you see that photo she tweeted out the other day of what was it? She picked up a book that said the title was "Why I'll Never Listen to White Women Talk About Race" or something like that. And she tweeted out, "I was like, hey, look how educated I am." She went to fucking Oxford for English. Good for you. Oh, good for you.
And
you okay, Hannah?
Headache. That's my excuse. Even though I don't actually feel headaches when I get them, that's going to be my excuse. You bring up Watson too much, and I get the the young chick saying brainless things. Migraine. My brain hurts.
Yeah, Wingardium Leviosa your brain back into your head, Emma. Mike, was there anything else?
We got one more. French Honey Badger, hello, gives us $2. I came in like a monolith ball, end quote. Feminists.
What?
That might be a reference to something.
It sounds like it. I just don't know what it is.
Miley Cyrus had that song. I came in like a wrecking ball.
Oh yeah. Okay. Why do you think that any of us here would understand that reference? But God bless you.
I got it because reference to it happens to be a meme.
Low-key, she's a Hannah Montana fan.
No, actually, Ron Jeremy did a parody.
So you're a Ron Jeremy fan?
just maybe a little.
You should have just stopped talking 10 seconds ago, Hannah.
No. I think he's hilarious.
Oh, sure. No, he's very entertaining. Like he's aside from, well, I was going to say, like, there's two people that I always wanted to host the Oscars, and one of them was Kevin Spacey until recently, but the other was Ron Jeremy.
Oh, now that would be a trip. That would be awesome.
Yeah, and then suddenly everybody in our community online would be like, oh, they wouldn't any longer say fuck the Oscars. They'd be like, oh my God, this is going to be the most legendary thing ever.
Yeah, I would actually watch that.
Totally. I mean, I watch them already, but I would enthusiastically watch. I work in the realm of film, so I find myself compelled to watch it. Moving on to
another $5 from French Honey Badger. I should have said I came in like a wrecking monolith. Sad face. Why not both? Hey.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, you came in like Napoleon. Merci beaucoup pour votre argent, monsieur. Moving on to number 3. This one's called The Bad Feminist, and it comes to you by Mike J. He did the write-up for us. So, Margaret Atwood, most famously known as the author of The Handmaid's Tale, very famous Canadian author, recently submitted an article to the Globe and Mail. Atwood came under fire from her fellow feminists when, in November of 2016, she signed a letter of support for Stephen Galloway. Galloway is a professor at the a former professor at the University of British Columbia, who was suspended for reasons that were at the time not disclosed, but were eventually revealed as allegations of sexual misconduct. Well, I wonder why they weren't disclosed. In the course of the investigation, Galloway was forced into signing a confidentiality agreement which barred him from saying anything in his own defense. Holy shit. So you weren't kidding before, Hannah. After months of court proceedings, the allegations of misconduct against Galloway were dismissed, but he was still fired from the university. Fuck. Atwood compares the lack of due process that Galloway faced to the current lack of due process surrounding the Me Too movement. Atwood argues that both instances are, quote, a symptom of a broken legal system where women and other sexual abuse complainants couldn't get a fair hearing through institutions. She fears that if the legal system continues to fail, that this new style of extremist vigilante justice will replace it. Ultimately, she would like to see the spotlight be put more on the University of British Columbia's, as it was their flawed process that led to the situation in the first place. Atwood states, this should have been a matter addressed by Canadian Civil Liberties or BC Civil Liberties. She hopes the university will take a page from Wilfrid Laurier and begin an independent inquiry into its actions. I applaud you, Miss Atwood. I haven't read a single one of your books because, no, it's like this. Hippie, feminist.
You do not know the way, brother. You do not know the way.
What is that from? I've been hearing that meme going around all like the last week. What's that all about?
It's a VR thing. Some kind of VR thing that people are using now. It looks pretty scary being in there. I'm trying to imagine being surrounded in three dimensions by Ugandan knuckles.
I was gonna say it's the Ugandan knuckles meme.
Knuckles, like Knuckles.
Yes.
Like, yeah, from Sonic the Hedgehog. That's why I'm seeing a bunch of red-looking teddy bears coming up on my Twitter feed all the time.
Yeah, well, and I never saw the whole thing all at once. I just saw it start popping up, and I'm like, "What the hell is this?" I had totally missed out on that. And I looked into it. It's hilarious, because the freak out over it when it started to gain some popularity, and then the social justice warriors are like, "It's racist," and it actually turns out that the movie was made by a Ugandan director with Ugandan actors. It wasn't something that was done to them. It was something that was done by them, and so now people enjoying it and passing it around, and they like it. They like it. So people enjoying it and passing it around is racist now.
That's amazing.
That brought it to life.
So let me get this straight. Like, if I get this, whatever this VR thing is, and I go into this place where, like, I don't know, there's 20 other people, and I just scream out, "Hey, that guy over there is a social justice warrior, or she's a feminist," you'll just get like 30 these knuckle avatars running in there and just
the words you're looking for are the commander and the queen.
I'm the captain now. More props to Margaret Atwood. I haven't read any of her books, mostly just because they didn't really seem like they appealed to me. I know that she's a great woman in terms of Canadian culture. And just hearing that there's still some sanity from somebody that a lot of people will consider a veteran of the feminist movement, talks some sense. It's encouraging. And I hope that more people like her would continue to stand up in favor of due process, because it'd be hard for people to completely what she has to say for that very reason.
She does have, I guess, as far as that goes, she has a lot of pull with people that will listen to feminists. But I can't. I don't like Margaret Atwood any more than I like Gloria Steinem, any more than I like any of the other second wave feminists that fought tooth and nail for the changes in law and policy that we have today that are so dysfunctional. And they fought them on the basis of claims that standards women faced that were standards women initiated, standards women pushed for other women, and standards that women used relational aggression against other women to enforce. And they talked about those standards as if men had imposed them on women, and men were using them to discriminate against women through no fault of women's own. That was the situation that she talks about, where women and other sexual abuse complainants couldn't get a fair hearing through institutions. That's bullshit. Okay, it's not a situation of patriarchal oppression that was causing any issues with a fair hearing in the legal system in terms of sexual abuse complainants. It was that was a situation of with female imposed standards, women either living up to or not living up to female imposed standards, and it was a class issue. It was not a patriarchal oppression issue. And I understand it's great that she's stepping up now and saying, hey, this has gone too far, but it went too far 30 years ago. It went too far as soon as they started saying that the legal system needs to answer accusations of rape with "yes, dear," and then just obey. It went too far as soon as they started arguing that if a woman is embarrassed to admit her side of a sexual encounter, that means that she was raped. It went too far when they started treating, analyzing sexual relationships between heterosexual couples as rape apology. Just analyzing them, not saying that women can't make their own decisions, not saying that it's okay for boundaries to be crossed without permission or anything like that. Just analyzing the dynamics of the relationships. They called that rape apology. That started 30 years ago. That was too far. This is just far enough too far that feminists are noticing it now. That the old school feminists are noticing it now. Now that it's taken them into their 60s and 70s to grow up. And I want to have respect for this, okay? But
do more.
It's 30 years too fucking late. It's about time. And yeah, congratulations on finally growing up in your 60s or 70s or 80s, depending on which feminist we're talking about. But and hopefully this will help some younger feminists actually use some common sense in terms of looking at the direction their movement is going, or maybe getting out of their movement.
Yeah,
it looks to me like they're just getting backlash. And in this situation, this is another thing I've been this has pissed me off from the beginning of the Me Too thing. All right, here we have all this information come out. What caused Weinstein to be able to get away with what he was doing? Well, one of them was the fact that he was able to buy silence using non-disclosure agreements, that the agreement was to commit a crime. Covering up a crime is a crime. and it's not illegal to make that agreement. Why? Why is it not illegal to make a legally binding agreement to cover up a crime?
Since when did obstruction of justice not mean anything?
Well, that's just it. And the thing is, once that agreement is made and signed, if you break that agreement, you can you have your repercussions. You can get sued for violating that contract. How can that contract be valid? Generally speaking, making a contract to commit a crime, you can't be held to that, right? Well, because it's a non-disclosure agreement, apparently you can. You can be held to a non-disclosure agreement that includes saying you won't report a crime to authorities. That has to be, if we can't apply existing law to that, and we should be able to apply existing law to that, but perhaps it needs to be, if we're going to have, this big government approach to sexuality, then we're going to have to turn around and specify in law that non-disclosure agreements cannot be used to commit a crime. That if the act of non-disclosure would be illegal without the Non-Disclosure Act, that the individual who signed the act can't be held to it under that circumstance. Can't stop them from going to cops about a crime. Can't stop them from testifying about a crime in court. Period.
Yeah. If feminism, the feminist movement means a lot to you people, especially up and coming feminists, burgeoning millennials, then you're going to have to start sympathizing a lot more with the type of disclosure that Hannah's talking about. And also, I like everything that you're just saying about Margaret Atwood. I didn't know much about Margaret Atwood aside from the fact that she was a feminist and she was a writer. But after you having told me all about that, I just want to take this second to apologize to everybody as a Canadian for Margaret Atwood, Justin Bieber, Shania Twain. But with all that, I just want to remind you that we did give you all something really, really cool, which was Rush. Just saying.
Rush makes up for everything.
Yes, Rush. Neil Peart. There's no greater drummer than him. He's an even better philosopher and writer than Margaret Atwood could ever be. Just
well,
saying.
And on the other end, don't apologize for Justin Bieber. Everybody demonizes the poor kid. He's just a kid. Well, I know he's like technically an adult now and everything, but I still see the kid, right? That was on YouTube and everything. Just a kid who happened to be hit with fame before he grew up and basically acted like a dumbass because of that. And he's not the only person in music that's ever done that. So he's just a kid.
Yeah, I know. I was just being colorful. Mike, is there anything that you wanted me to say before we move on to the final story?
No, got some super chats. If you
all right,
if you want to read those out. Okay, from a while ago, we got $10 from Observing Libertarian. Hey, dude, I couldn't possibly be interested in seeing Emma Watson's tits. In her he for she speech, she said men were not human, echoing Valerie Solanas' Scum manifesto. True.
Wait, she said that?
No, but she did say give men permission to be vulnerable and human too. As though she just said it blasé, as though it's just normal for her to give permission to men to be human. It's just
that was kind of infuriating. Like, men don't get to be human unless women give them permission. Really? Is that what you intended to say? Because that's what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this is why I mainly associate the word vapid with Emma Watson. She just she's so used to parroting, and she's an actress, and I think she was up there acting. I don't think this stuff is stuff that she necessarily understands fully. I think she took a lot of classes full of gender feminism and gender feminist rhetoric, and she's up there repeating the stuff that she was taught in class.
Yeah, this is what happens when you're taken out of school at age 11 and you just start becoming a fucking parrot for the politics that surround that area. Listen, well, before I go on, was there anything else in terms of super chats?
Yep, French Honey Badger, $2. You were right, Hannah. No shit, Sherlock. That was from like 5 minutes ago. I forget what it was we were talking about.
Hannah's right about everything.
I am not right about everything, but thank you for saying that. And I'm glad I was right about something.
Well, I mean, like when it comes to stuff that we talk about on the show, we certainly hope that you're right about everything. Otherwise, you know, our audience, as much as we love them, they'll be on our shit about that.
Yeah, that's important too. Always be on my shit if you don't think I'm right.
Yeah, seriously, guys.
All right, then. We got $5 from Zeranx. Hannah, making payoffs and NDAs illegal is hurtful to women as it negatively affects their ability to offset the wage gap. Oh, that was a joke.
Well, I'm not talking about making them illegal. I'm talking about making it clear in the law that the stipulation in law that a contract is invalid if the conditions of the contract involve committing a crime. Making it clear in law that applies to non-disclosure agreements, because that's really the agreements themselves, in terms of like those protect a proprietary information. They protect a number of things that are very important, but it should not be legal to force someone to not report a crime and not testify in court about a crime.
Okay, and that's it for now. Mike?
Yes, that's all the super chats we have.
Okay, so here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. Apparently, Allison wanted us to introduce this new segment that I wasn't aware of until just a few minutes ago. Apparently, for the foreseeable future, we're going to be doing this thing called Short News Roundup, where there are certain stories that have come out this past week that we hadn't had the time to address fully during the show, but we want to make sure that we actually do address them. And Allison is going to be coming on in just a second. I'm actually just talking to her on Discord right now. Crap. Well, no. Okay. She's saying that she might take a second to set up. So, Hannah, can you just do me a favor while I'm reading this out? Can you please just message Allison and tell her to not bother, because we got to get this out of the way. Please and thank you. All right. So here are some stories that we missed, but we want to tell you guys about. And when I'm done, Mike, Hannah, if there's anything you want to say about them, just let me know. So 3 more men have been in the spotlight since #MeToo. Aziz Ansari, James Franco, and Stan Lee. Ansari has been accused by an unnamed woman after they had a date and got a little frisky back at his apartment. Franco has been accused by 5 women and drew the ire of Hollywood after he wore a Time's Up pin to the Golden Globes. Of course he did. Lee's former nurses, who have cared for him at his home in Los Angeles, have accused him of being handsy as well as making inappropriate remarks. The latest in SJW cannibalism, with rumors circulating about a potential presidential run from Oprah Winfrey, Paul Joseph Watson started a Change.org petition asking Oprah to disavow her seemingly good friend Harvey Weinstein. So far, it has 25,000 plus signatures. From the UK, 2 professors from the University of London have a problem with Beyoncé taking a 22-day veganism challenge. In feminist media studies, the professors argue that her diet is a quote-unquote post-feminist dietary practice because it feeds into consumer culture, which is supposedly inherently discriminatory. And some brighter news from La Résistance. A Swedish university professor refuses his school's order to teach about a specific feminist author in order to ensure a gender balance. In an interesting twist, the author, Judith Butler, said in an interview that she does not want her work imposed at university because of gender balance quotas. From Connecticut, Nikki Jovino, the former Sacred Heart University student who made false rape accusations against 2 football players in order to gain sympathy from a potential boyfriend, rejected a plea deal for second-degree falsely reporting an incident and tampering with or fabricating physical evidence. The trial date is set for February 21st. Wrapping with SJWs versus Science, John Horgan wrote for Scientific American, arguing that science is sexist at its core. He states that women in STEM fields face discrimination and maltreatment from men, and that male scientists portray females as males as intellectual inferiors. Hogan also refers to James Damore's infamous Google memo and says that it contained cherry-picked studies that supposedly prove male intellectual superiority. No, he didn't, you fucking idiot. Little did Hogan understand was that Damore simply pointed out that there are biological differences between men and women, and within that memo, he gave suggestions so that Google could be more welcoming towards women. Because, you know, guys, whenever somebody brings up biology, what your mind should immediately do is just assume that what they're trying to argue for is biological superiority. Oh, you fucking idiot. Okay. Hannah, Mike, is there anything you want to say about this before we go and talk about Friends?
I have a couple of brief things.
Yeah.
I don't want to say a bunch here. And I don't have something on everything. It's mainly the early stuff, which is why I was asking in the chat to go to look at the write-up, because some of this is like, some of it's been talked to death. But the very first one, and I can't remember, Aziz Ansari. Okay, there we are. And James Franco and Stanley. So the accusation by the unnamed woman about the date, this is something that this is the end result of feminism's victim narrative. The idea that if a chick has been through an awkward situation, that somehow that awkwardness that exists because women have already put men in fear of you can't do anything right syndrome, that awkwardness is now an attack, which is absolute bullshit. This right here is why we have Joey Jojo in the chat arguing for sex robots. Because women have basically started using accusations of maliciousness as a bludgeon in place of just having an interpersonal relationship and dealing with the fact that everything is not always all cut and dried, and that there isn't a script for every situation that you're in, and that sometimes guys aren't confident. And it's okay for guys to not be confident. For crying out loud, the guy of your daydreams isn't real. And trying to force the guy on the couch next to you to be the guy of your daydreams by using I'm going to accuse you of maliciousness if you're awkward with me as a threat is only going to make him more awkward or push him away entirely. And I've written about this before, and I'm going to say it again. MGTOW exists because of shit like this. Ladies, you were asking for it.
Preach.
And then the other one is the accusation against Stan Lee. I'm not familiar with the accusation against Franco, but the accusation against Stan Lee. The first thing that struck me with this is the accuser went straight after money, didn't report to authorities, didn't do any of the things that you do when you've been subject to workplace harassment. And when the accuser didn't immediately get money, they violated HIPAA laws. And if this took place in the United States, and I think it did, I don't think he moved out of the United States. This person who went to the media and said things about his mental state, whether they were true or not, and I suspect they were not true, but even if they had been true, it's illegal to disclose that stuff to the public if you are a caregiver. So this is an individual who has done unscrupulous things and is behaving not like a victim, but a predator. And I strongly believe, not just suspect, but strongly believe this is an attempt at extortion, exactly like he says, not a victim dealing with a predator of any kind, other than him as the victim dealing with predatory exploitation of sexual misconduct standards. And that's it. I don't think I had anything else that I really wanted to get on there. It's just those two things that really stuck in my craw.
Yeah, I understand. Those are the two things that I want to sort of give my thoughts on quickly. For what it's worth, Aziz Ansari and Stan Lee, based on my estimation, it shouldn't be worth much, but I'll give it anyways. They're both innocent. Yeah, pretty much. Aziz Ansari like Hannah said, what they're trying to attribute malice. Grace, the woman that Aziz was with, is trying to attribute malice to the guy when apparently it's just what Hannibal Lecter would call tricky fumblings. And yeah, he did nothing wrong, which is surprising because, he fits the bill for what, like the self-proclaimed feminists that say men are bad. And then what happens? They're like all the video games journalists that get accused of, or credibly accused of sexual misconduct. But here it doesn't seem to be the case. And also, yeah, Stanley, there doesn't seem to be anything there. As far as James Franco, I don't know. I mean, the guy always seemed pretty weird. The guy always seems like he's high on something, but that's not evidence of guilt. So just keep that in mind. Anyways, we got about 20 minutes left, so let's move on to the final story. And here's one that I actually did a write-up for. And it's on a subject that I actually have a lot of expertise in because I've watched every episode of Friends. So, ladies and gentlemen, oftentimes when you hear social justice advocates criticize something, they'll use what I call the double-ist phobic tactic. Let me repeat that. The double-ist phobic tactic. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, they'll use two words that end in the suffix ist, words such as racist and sexist, and then conclude by using a word that ends with the suffix phobic, words such as homophobic and transphobic. Double-ist phobic. Whenever somebody does this, be certain they are indoctrinated idiots and that you engage with them at your own peril. I bring this up because my stupid ass is about to engage the thoughts of people who use the very same double-ist tactic on the popular 90s sitcom Friends. In an article for The Independent, writer Alana Kaplan has pointed out how several modern viewers of Friends describe the show's plot lines as sexist, racist, and transphobic. Here are some tweets from millennial viewers of the show before we get into Alana's thoughts. Quote, rewatching Friends on Netflix and damn, never realized just how annoying and homophobic Ross was with this. Did always love Carol and Susan though, should have known. By the way, in case you guys don't know, Carol and Susan were a lesbian couple on the show. And that tweet comes from a woman named Amy. Here's another tweet by a woman named Christine Carr. I was a uni student in the 90s, so looked forward to rewatching Friends on Netflix over New Year. But I agree, the fat Monica and gay Chandler jokes feel very out of place now. And was Joey always that bit creepy? Disappointing. The writer of the article notes that sexism seeps in when Rachel hires a nanny for her daughter Emma, but Emma's father Ross can't handle the fact that the nanny is a man. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a lot of thoughts on this. Ross takes it one step further to being homophobic by asking if he's gay. She also notes that Rachel would have been fired for sexual harassment because she hires an assistant who isn't qualified for the position because she wants to date him. And finally, a lot of you might be wondering where the racist accusations come in. Well, it's because there are only two notable non-white characters on the show. Ross's girlfriend Julie from season 2 and Ross's girlfriend Charlie from season 10. Now, like I said, I can refute every single one of these things, but before I do, I want to pass it off to both Mike and Hannah. Have either of you watched Friends? Any of you recognize the episodes that are being talked about here?
I have watched quite a lot of Friends because there was nothing but TV back in the 90s. So yeah, we kind of religiously watched shit even if it was crap. And yeah, it was incredibly tame, if I recall. I mean, they occasionally skirted around serious issues, but it wasn't really their bag, was it? It was all about sort of just human stories and then that sort of thing. But I'm not in the least bit surprised that the snowflakes don't like it. They don't like anything more than they don't like anything. I don't know why I'm qualifying that sentence.
You don't have to.
I was already working when that started, when that show started, and for a large portion of its run, I was living in an environment where television wasn't affordable. Mm-hmm. So I really didn't see much. I think I might have seen one full episode. but I think it was also on at the same time as something else that I either recorded and watched later or watched when it was on. Probably It's probably something like The Charmed or The X-Files or some other, sci-fi or fantasy shit. But in any case, it's not something that I ever really paid a lot of attention to, other than when I did watch it, I noticed that it was very similar to other formulaic sitcoms where they had the group of people get themselves into try to do something ordinary, do it in a manner that gets themselves into a ridiculous conundrum, and then try to work their way out of it.
Mhm.
And they did that every show, and it was funny, and I liked it. I don't think that there was anything wrong with the show, but this does really kind of demonstrate the degree of snowflakery. Imagine if these guys started watching television from the 50s and 60s, they would be traumatized. Absolutely traumatized. Imagine if they watched old episodes of Bewitched, they would lose their shit. And imagine if they tried to keep up with Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. Holy shit, would they die? If they can't handle Friends, they shouldn't go back. Good God, imagine if they watched the Benny Hill Show. You want to see heads exploding? Stick a bunch of social justice warrior millennials in a room with a big screen and just play episode after episode of Benny Hill.
Oh, and 2 words: Mel Brooks.
Oh God, yeah. They wouldn't. None of the stuff he did would have been made today under their rules. None of the stuff he did would have been acceptable today. Good God, Blazing Saddles would have gotten him crucified.
Mm-hmm. Where the white women at? Look, that's something I could say on Yellow. Look, so this is interesting because the stereotype of the SJW that I've always had was a millennial like me, hopefully younger than me, that would sit at home whenever they're not doing anything. They'd probably just be watching Netflix, and they'd probably be watching Friends while sipping their expensive latte. And then every so often they'll go on Tumblr and LARP as revolutionaries. But now that they're criticizing Friends, which is something that people that I know that are social justice warriors, they all seem to adore. Now that they're criticizing it, it's just blowing my entire worldview apart. Okay, first thing. This is the one that jumped out to me the most. I'm going to read a bit of this summary again, and then I'll go off of that. The writer of the article notes that sexism seeps in when Rachel hires a nanny for her daughter Emma, but Emma's father, Ross, can't handle the fact that the nanny is a man. Ross takes it one step further to being homophobic by asking if he's gay. Okay, look. Friends, what you're implying is that the show Friends is homophobic and sexist. No. The whole storyline of that episode was implying that Ross is being sexist and homophobic, and that is bad. The comedy in that episode is centered around pointing out that Ross's supposedly out-of-date attitudes don't hold up, and that he has to come to terms with them. And if you watch towards the end of the episode, he actually does start to express his emotions. The male nanny actually gets through to Ross and gets him to overcome his macho exterior. So you don't call it sexist and homophobic and attribute that to the show as a whole and the show being terrible, because that's not what's happening. Okay. She also notes that Rachel would have been fired for sexual harassment because she hires an assistant who is okay. Yeah, there's an episode where Rachel, she, the character played by Jennifer Aniston, she works in what is it? I think it's like Bloomingdale's or something, or Ralph Lauren. And she gets promoted to a job where she can have an assistant. And she hires an assistant not based on their qualifications, but because the guy she hires is actually exceptionally good looking. And while that is sexual harassment, it's not like the show was trying to make light of it. Everybody in that circle, the 6 main friends, were saying that Rachel was being extremely unprofessional and that she shouldn't do it. But she does it anyway, and luckily for her, because at the end of every sitcom, things go back to somewhat normal. It just works out in her favor, even though the show itself was implying that what she was doing was very, very wrong.
But did it go horribly wrong first before it all worked out?
Did it? No, actually,
the formula of the show, because usually that's the kind of thing that these sitcoms do.
Well, no, actually, the guy, I don't remember him being exceptionally unqualified. I just remember she hired him because he was good looking, even though there were people that came in before him that had higher credentials.
So he wasn't the best man for the job, just the best looking man for the job.
Yeah. Let's see what else. Okay. The racism. Oh yeah, there's only 2 non-white characters. Oh god, the fact that there's parity in terms of how many lead men and lead women characters, that's just not good enough for you. Now, okay, yeah, we made that. We've reached that hurdle. Now we got to go over the what color are these people hurdle. Jesus Christ, just be happy that you made it that far, you fucking ungrateful bastards. Okay. Go ahead.
So are they going to get mad at In Living Color, which ran, if I remember right, around the same time, for not as long, because they didn't have racial parity in that show either? There were white people on it, but like Jim Carrey was on that show.
Yeah. What the fuck was up with the Jeffersons, huh?
Yeah. Well, the Jeffersons stemmed from the Archie Bunker show, and then sort of became their own thing.
I don't know that. See, remember?
Oh, okay, yeah, you're not from. Well, no.
It's not that I'm young. It's also
George Jefferson was the annoying neighbor, and then everybody liked him so much he got his own show. But we were such a racist country at the time that would never happen, right?
Right. Yeah. It's not the fact that I'm young. It's just I actually. So I wouldn't know. I just know that the Jeffersons existed, and the theme song. Well, we're moving on now to the I will never do that again. I'm sorry. I apologize. Let's see what else.
I'm being corrected, Archie. But I always say Archie Bunker because that's the main character of the show. But yeah, All in the Family was the name of the show. But everybody refers to Archie Bunker because that's the character everybody remembers from that show the most. Mm-hmm. The main asshole character.
What else? The fat Monica and gay Chandler jokes. Okay, just because somebody makes a fat joke or a gay joke, that doesn't mean that they're inherently. Well, even I don't even understand. Like if somebody's fat, like obese, for fuck's sake, if they continue down that lifestyle, they're going to die eventually at a point. I understand not being mean towards them, but it is something that you should. I don't understand why people want to try and protect fat people that much. There's a difference between being curvy and not being a skeleton and being obese, right? And as far as Monica on the show, they even made reference to the fact that she was having heart problems when she was fat. And how she was completely oblivious to the problems that she was having because she was a teenager. That was sort of the source of the comedy. As far as gay jokes involving Chandler, they weren't making fun of being gay, or they were making fun of the homosexual community. In fact, at a lot of different times during the show's runtime, they've tried to normalize the gay lifestyle. And in that respect, it was very progressive at the time. I remember, Phoebe had an ex-husband who was a gay ice dancer, and they just portrayed him as a normal dude. I can't think of any other gay characters off the top of my head. That's sort of the one that pops off the top of my head. Yeah, and there was the other tweet by Amy pointing out, how homophobic Ross was. Yeah, he was. But the thing is, that was a character flaw, and he was trying to overcome it. It's not like the show was trying to justify it. And those are the main things that are brought up here in the article. Look, Friends, who was it? I think it was Ben Shapiro that said that Friends was one of the great blights on American culture because it sort of normalized the sexual deviancy of a lot of characters on that show, whereas people on the left, people including me actually, would completely disagree with that, saying that that's just baseline conservatism and being a prude, and Ben Shapiro doesn't know what he's talking about. And for that reason alone, you would think that people who are on the left, people like social justice warriors, would try to defend a show like Friends. But no, not even this bloody show. A great show. It's a show that everybody should check out at some point. That it's not even immune to their criticisms. Fuck, man. How much further is this going to go? I'm done.
Honestly, what you were part of what you were talking about here is that there's an intergenerational backward butthurt thing that I've noticed. Generations of people that are separated sort of by communications styles and everything. The next generation or generations later, they'll look back at something that somebody created as a metaphor or a portrayal that's supposed to demonstrate the wrongness of a thing. And they'll oppose that thing too, right? But they'll look at this demonstration of the wrongness of a thing as an act of normalizing it, as a portrayal of it as okay. And it'll be in a society like if you look at the way that they said, Ross's homophobia and everything being portrayed is promotion of it. The same thing happens with Mark Twain's Huck Finn, where he used portrayal of society-wide racism and the situations and behaviors that Huck Finn ends up experiencing and engaging in order to navigate that society-wide racism while trying to protect his friend Jem from being essentially punished for not being attached to an owner while he was out wandering around with Huck Finn. This is something that like a lot of people today seem to mistake it for an endorsement of the behaviors Twain was portraying.
Right.
When you read the book, you can see that it's designed, that's written to make you angry at those behaviors and to see those behaviors as flat out stupid. But there's the folks that don't get it, that don't understand the subtlety, and so they see it as a portrayal of these behaviors as normal, which at the time they were the social norm, but not as a portrayal of these behaviors as stupid. That the normalcy of these behaviors is stupid. And the same thing goes on with this show. These snowflakes see the portrayal of the stupidity of Ross's behaviors being normal, and they don't get that it's a means of demonstrating, this is really dumb, and they really they don't just miss the point. It's like they almost are blind to it. Like you could shove the point up their nose and they would not realize there was a point there. And they would still be on that whole thing of, you're demonstrating this exists, therefore you are endorsing it. And it really is an intergenerational thing for the most part. I noticed with some degrees of snowflakes, it's actually so bad that they don't even get it if people from the other side of the aisle satirically describe something or sarcastically describe something, and they don't understand those things when they're being used to criticize something bad. They still see them as endorsement of the bad thing. But it seems to be a lot worse when it's one generation does satire or even just a comedic portrayal of something, and the next generation looks back at it. They don't get the point.
Yeah. I can't imagine what it'd be like to sit these fucking snowflakes in front of a movie like To Kill a Mockingbird. See how much that's the point on that. Wait, so what they're saying is that we should give people who have been accused of rape due process? That doesn't seem right. But I mean, he was innocent. Ah, fuck. I can't. You get the point.
Well, or they might be saying that we should wrongly convict black people because they're black. That they would take it that way too.
Yeah,
because
no.
that's also criticized in the story. So yeah, that's exactly what would happen.
When did Atticus Finch go from being like, what was it, AFI's greatest hero of all time to being just another straight white male perpetuating rape culture? I can't. Okay, well, thankfully
in the current year, well, I don't know which current year, but the current year.
Yeah, thankfully we've come to the end of the show, so I don't have to think about it too much anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, we did a full hour and a half show. This was a pretty big show. Thanks so much for joining us and entertaining us as us idiots talk about these crazy topics. Listen, if you're watching us live or if you're watching this pre-recorded, it doesn't matter. I'm talking to you directly as individuals. Yes, I'm talking to you right now. You paying attention? Hello. Okay. So if you want to help us out and you don't have any money to give us, although we would appreciate it if you do, I just want to say one thing that you can do to really help us out right now is just hitting the like button. Honestly, you have no idea how much it helps us. What it does is when we hit certain milestones in likes on our videos, it tells the YouTube algorithm that our videos should be passed around more to people outside of maybe what would normally be Honey Badger Radio's sphere of influence. So if you just pick up your mouse or your phone or whatever you're listening to us on right now and hit that like button, you'll be doing a great service to us. And also, like I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to donate, go to patreon.com/Honey Badger Radio. Subscribe to Honey Badger Radio. We do tons of great content here every single week here on the channel. Mike, Hannah, do you want to show your respective shows before we conclude?
All right, I'll go first. The Rationing is on Mondays. Sundays, if you're a patron of a certain level, you get to see them a day in advance. Unless I don't do them until Monday, which sometimes happens. But yeah, watch The Rationing on Mondays.
Hannah?
Alrighty. Now that I've figured out, I'm using 2 mute buttons now because apparently the Discord one sometimes doesn't actually mute me. Yeah. Thanks to just dynamics. But anyway, so Thursday is Badger Talk, and I haven't actually fleshed it out yet. I'm still in the process of writing the opening. But this week we are going to be talking about social and legal tolerance for women lying. We're still in the accountability gap. It's this is something that I started exploring a couple months before, just sort of looking at the idea and talking about the idea a couple of months before I started doing it on the show. And I initially started talking about it just in terms of the wage gap myth, because I got tired of hearing about this freaking wage gap that doesn't exist. There's a earnings gap, and it does have to do with differences in accountability. And I thought, well, looking at this actually spans a variety of gender issues. So that's the one we're going to explore this week. Social and legal tolerance for women lying. And there is definitely an accountability gap in terms of that. There's definitely an accountability gap at the legal end, in particular with committing crimes related to lying. And so that's going to be our show.
Awesome. And you
Thursday
guys...
at 8 p.m. Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Yes, make sure you don't miss that, guys. It's actually a really good show. I say that as if I'm surprised. No, Anna does a really good job. And also, just for me, I do a breaking news segment. Whenever there's breaking news, it's called Breaking Badger. So make sure you keep your eyes open for that whenever there's a piece of news that just happens to drop. And finally, before I forget, I just want to say this show doesn't just end here. We also have an after show, as we said at the very beginning. And if you want to take a part in that, I just want to remind you, go to patreon.com/Honey Badger Radio. I think all you have to do is give like $2 and you're able to get access. I might be wrong about that, but just check to see the different tiers. And join us as we talk about campus lunacy. And that's it. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.